Hey guys, are you ready for a tip that will 100% guarantee that your rating goes up? Okay, so I'm going to share this game with you. Two players, both around the 1500 mark. It's 10-minute rapid, and I'm going to show you here the move list as well. And what we're doing is we're looking for some of the quickest moves made, okay? Because basically, I think we have one blunder each in the game, but so often games are decided on who makes the last worst mistake. And in this one, it was my opponent, and he rushed out his move. Bottom line, if you've only got a few moments, always take time to double check every move. Simple as that. Okay, so let's watch this. So we've got e4, c6, the Caro-Kann defense. I play d4, grab the center. d5 is played as normal, and I play knight to c3. Okay, so what I'm expecting here is normally takes, and then I bring the bishop out. This is the von Hennig gambit, and it's working pretty well for me. We don't get that. We get the Campomanes attack, which I'm not very familiar with, and I haven't checked my study to see what the appropriate thing is. But it's a bit like a kind of Caro-Kann, isn't it? Your opponent is throwing his knight into the path of your e4 pawn, and it's really begging for pawn to e5, kicking the knight with tempo, and removing the f6 square away from that knight. So I think the knight would normally go round to there. He does indeed. And this is not unusual in a few openings, okay? But it does mean now that white has good space in this area of the board. All right. So I play knight f3. I figure it's kind of principled. I did wonder about playing like f4, f5 and trying to grab the entire board. But I figured, no, I'm trying to play grown up. I'm trying to play principled. We have g6 now. So this is now signifying or telegraphing that my opponent wants to fianchetto his bishop, probably castle kingside, and therefore I can start to formulate my own plans of attack against that. This pawn is very often a weakness, I find, when I'm playing against the Caro-Kann. For example, I really want to put my light square bishop here on d3, but then c5 is a signature move in the Caro, and this pawn can end up suffering. So the first thing I do is bring up my dark squared bishop, because against this bishop fianchetto on the king side, one idea that we play against the Piet's defense, against the modern King's India defense, is to use your queen and bishop together, get your bishop into h6 and trade off this important defensive piece. Particularly if the rook is there on f8, you can force a trade, okay? And then probably castle long and think about throwing my pawns up here. Bishop fianchettos, and now I play my light square bishop to e2. I'm just nervous about putting it on d3. But I figure it's got prospects here. It's on this nice diagonal here, but it also might be a bit more useful there, and it's not in the way of the d pawn. We have castles, d2 by Hunty, queen d2. So just setting up this idea here, and now my opponent swings his knight around to b6, and I'm thinking, okay, it is my kind of plan to castle this way. Am I worried about a pair of horses creeping up down the queen side? I'm not too concerned, but I decide to go in for the bishop elimination idea. He comes out with a hit on my knight, and I just trade off the bishops. And now h3. So now the king is sans dark squared bishop defender, and it's starting to look a little bit like, his horses, for example, are just too far away from the king really to be useful. And I figure it's time to press an advantage. See if I can force a trade of this bishop, which is his most active piece on this side. So he does decide to trade, and here I thought for a bit, nearly 30 seconds on this. Do I recapture with the bishop, or do I recapture with the g-pawn? And in the end, I decided to go for the g-pawn, because I figured that this doubled pawn on f3 could be used as a battering ram in some way, and it can't hurt to have an open G-file. And we see how this pans out, because it turns out that that G-file is very, very important. We now have Queen D7, which I thought was an odd move. Apart from anything else, it's taking this square away from the knight. But it's like, where's the queen hoping to go from there? Because she can't go here or here. Right, so is she going, does she want to go to one of these squares? I'm just not clear. So I castle long. Black develops his other knight to the quiet end of the board where nothing's happening. I immediately here, 2.8 seconds, I immediately play A3, because I'm just saying to myself, well, what's this knight's idea? Okay, can't go to this square, he can only go to this square. Is there anything, my opponent has no bishops, is there anything wrong with pushing H3 and just removing this square? No, I couldn't see a problem with that, so I push it. And now black pushes E6. And I'm thinking, okay, right, you've got your queen off the back rank, yeah, but where's this queen going? He's just boxed in his own queen. And look at this king, right? All his stuff is behind this pawn wall. Right, so it's time to go make a beeline for the king. Rook D to G1. Get the rook on the semi-open file, line it up with his match, right? Absolutely principled play. It's almost an automatic move you can play. There's nothing wrong with that move. White now pushes C5, which is, you know, like we said, the signature Caro move, but it's quite late in the day. And I decide here we can just probably ignore that. If he wants to take, I can recapture with the queen. My queen has, you know, good access to the fourth rank. So it's time now to push Harry the H-pawn. Opponent pushes Harry to H5, preventing, which is a good move, I think, preventing the advance of my Harry, but I've got a double Freddy. Okay, so Freddy to F4. His rook comes over. Maybe his idea here is to give his king an escape, because previously his rook was kind of blocking off any ideas of his king getting that way down the board. But again, a bit of an unusual move. Okay, and now I throw in bishop b5. Now I'd spotted this earlier that I could disturb the queen, and the engine says this is a blunder. Not because it's a bad move in itself, but because it's not helpful, and according to the engine I had a much better move. But I figure let's just disturb the queen. She can't go here, she can't stay on there, she's going to have to go to one of these other squares. But then you argue, you know, is this bishop doing anything better here? I mean, obviously, oh yeah, sorry, the other reason why the rook went there, because I'm threatening bishop takes h5, okay? The only defender is this pawn, it's pinned, it can't move, so that's why he moved the rook across. Makes sense. Okay. And now, yeah, maybe just moving the bishop away from that idea, because it was, I'm using here, in this position, my bishop is pinning this rook down to the defense of a silly little h-pawn. But having moved it here, now his rook is freed up as well. So anyway, queen moves to e7, and now I come up with a plan. Okay, this is really, really key. Now, might be wondering, well, what did the computer want me to do instead of that? The computer wanted me to push the f-pawn immediately. Okay, but we have to learn to be able to ignore the computer sometimes. So this is my idea, right? This is my thinking here. I want to push f5, right? This pawn can't capture because it's pinned. This pawn, if I push f5, can capture. And then I don't actually have a recapture there. But what I thought was, well, what's not busy? What's not doing anything useful? This knight here. I figure this knight, and then I start kind of looking at squares where the knight can go around the board. Okay, he could go to e2, could then go to g3. And that's kind of in the way of the rook, but hey, you know, but let's say knight goes here, then I push this. And he can't capture with the pawn because knight takes, attacking king and queen and another discovered check. So that's double check and royal fork in one move. Okay, so again, knight here, here. I push the pawn, e takes, which is compulsory because otherwise I might push on to f6 with a royal fork by a pawn, which is not the most common thing. So yeah, if my knight's on this square, there, pawn takes, I capture again, it's still a royal fork, and this pawn can't take because it's still pinned because the knight's moved. Right, knight's moved away from this g3 square. So that's my thinking. I'm sitting there thinking, that's 1500 level thinking. Well done, Hunty. You know? And here, my opponent thinks for a while and pushes c4. And now I'm going, okay, you're kind of trapping my bishop, but I have bigger ideas, right? So knight to g2. And here is the key moment, right? My opponent plays knight c7 in less than 6 seconds, all right? I think for only 2 seconds and push f5, right? But here's the key thing. Another 6.8 seconds and the knight grabs the offered bishop, right? So it's part of the reason why I moved quickly is because I wanted him to move quickly, okay? The bishop hangs, but he should have taken more time. It's a 10-minute game, he's got 5.5 minutes left. And in a position like this, right, when there's stuff bearing down on the royal family, you cannot do stuff like this, right? So he grabs, I think now for just 2 seconds, I don't know, 100%, I was saying to myself, like, is there a better move here? But f6, check, and a fork on king and queen, right? You can't turn that down. A royal fork with a pawn, beautiful. Queen takes, pawn takes, king takes, queen in, and now I push on. He brings his knight back, okay? Which is another mistake because queen e5. Now this knight's on an undefended square, and I have a fork, and black here resigns. But this is the key thing: grabbing the bishop, right? Grabbing the bishop here with 6.8 seconds of thinking time. Any time that something is dangled before you like that, like, ooh, free material, right? You've got to think, you've got to at least think twice, if not 3 times, right? Clearly, here, he had to evade with the king or the queen, right? I think possibly get the king out of the way here because like something like, yeah, he moves the king out of the way. Even if I come in with an attack now, we've got, look, all these blocked off pawns. He's probably absolutely fine here. Okay, because my attack has just petered out, right? I've just completely concreted this whole bit of the board. He just has to move his queen out the way, and he's not doing too bad. The eval isn't working here, but yeah, you can see. So yeah, bottom line, if you're playing 10-minute blitz, think about it. You've got a 60-move game. That's 10 seconds per move. Oh, here it goes. Yeah, it still favours white. But it's not the end of the world here, right? But this move, after this, after that, you know, what are his options? Queen f8, it's saying is best. King g8 also, or king f8. Just retreat one of these two and you fight on, okay? But yeah, bottom line, 60 moves in a 10-minute game is 600 seconds. That's minimum 10 seconds per move. Right, if you play with an increment, you've got more. Some moves are very obvious. You know, we played our opening moves pretty quickly, for example. But you can afford to take 10 seconds on every move. Just sanity check every single move. I cannot tell you the number of games. It might be interesting actually to go through and analyse how many blunders are played quickly compared to how many blunders are played slowly. If you want to cut down your blunders, just take a little bit longer. Okay, but that could be a little fun exercise. All right, so yeah, nice little game though, and very, very satisfying attack here at the king side as well. But yeah, I don't think my opponent played fantastically well. Let's just check the review. 77 for me. I'm satisfied with that. 66 for black. Yeah, feels about right. And a brilliancy with this pawn move as well, which is nice, because it says that, you know, not an easy move to find, but that was the plan, you know. And it looks like it's overwhelmed with two attackers, but it's obviously not. But yeah, very satisfying. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. See you soon.